Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?
No known traffic.
Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000 feet.
What type of aircraft is it?
I cannot confirm. It's four bright, seems to me like landing lights. The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity?
No known aircraft in the vicinity.
Seems to be playing some sort of game. He's flying over me. Delta Sierra Juliet. It's not an aircraft, it's...
Can you describe the aircraft?
As it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify it. It has such speed. It's before me right now, Melbourne.
How large would the object be?
Seems like it's stationary. What it's doing right now is orbiting. The thing is just orbiting on top of me. It's also got a green light and a sort of metallic, like, it's shiny on the outside. It's just vanished.
Is the aircraft still with you?
Say again?
Is the aircraft still with you?
Now approaching from the southwest. The engines are rough idling. The thing is coughing.
What are your intentions?
My intentions are to go to King Island, Melbourne.
The disappearance of Frederick Valentich in 1978 remains one of the most bizarre cases in aviation history. I took an in-depth look at this case in episode 8, but what brings it back to my attention is a listener's story that has a direct correlation to some of the events that took place during Frederick Valentich's last radio transmission. It seems only fitting, as this October will be 41 years since Frederick Valentich and his plane vanished.
The first time it happened, I was sleeping and woke up because I felt a hand on my leg and I realized that I couldn't move.
And he come across this object on the ground, which was the shape of a flying saucer. So he jumped out of his pickup and went down there, and there was 4 beings laying on the ground.
When I raised my head back up, I was turning my head, and out of my peripheral vision, I seen something hop to a tree. And it was tall, about 7, 8 foot tall, and it was black, real hairy, like a gorilla.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Nick Ryan, and this is episode 33. Over the past few weeks, I have been receiving a lot of listener stories, and I want to reiterate how much I appreciate your trust and willingness to talk about your experiences. Tonight, I'd like to share just one of those stories with you. It shares a commonality with the disappearance of Frederick Valentich, and it may answer a question that researchers have had for over 40 years. Tonight's story comes from Cass. And Cass writes, "Hey there, my name is Cass, and I have a nightmare story to relate to you. Feel free to share this if you desire. Let me just preface this with the fact that I'm not insane. People look at me funny when I mention what I'm about to share, which has made me more reluctant to do so. I started listening to your podcast only yesterday, and was struck by something from episode 8, namely the last 17 seconds of communication between the Australian pilot and Melbourne Tower. I haven't read the transcripts yet, or looked further into the info available as of yet, and this is mostly due to a personal fear. That being said, the scraping, metallic noise that's heard isn't metal, and it's not scraping. It's something else entirely, and requires a little explanation. Before I go further reading Cass's account, I'd like to replay the audio of that metallic scraping sound from Frederick Valentich's last moments of broadcasting. Cass goes on to say, "In 1996, I was staying with some friends after getting out of an abusive relationship with my ex. They lived in a remote part of the Utah wilderness called Fruitland, which is 16 miles west of Duchesne. I was awakened around 2 or 3 in the morning to a brilliant light flooding the bedroom where my daughters and I were sleeping. Given that the property sat on 5 acres of high desert, with the closest road being half a mile away, I knew it wasn't a car. The road to the house was dirt, mud, and gravel, and after the rain that we had gotten, it was pretty sloppy. A car would have made enough noise, even at a crawl, that it would have woken me up. Feeling my heart pounding in my chest, I thought that my ex had possibly walked up the slippery path and was checking to see what room I might be in. He'd tried to kill me once, and I knew, given the opportunity, that he'd try again. It wasn't a flashlight that was shining in the window. The whole area was flooded, making the sagebrush and juniper trees seem like bare sticks on a field of snow. I took a tentative step back, wanting to try and rationalize what I was seeing, only to feel myself grow dizzy before collapsing entirely to the ground. I wasn't sure where I was or what was going on when my eyes next opened, only that there was a bright light shining in my face, and that strange sound heard on the tape filling the room around me. When I saw the large, silvery black eyes meet mine, I felt a fear I'd never known. It looked over to the others that surrounded me, and in that same noise seemed to speak, I guess, to its partners. The one above my head to the right leaned over me, at which point I blacked out. The next memory I can recall is standing outside in the mud, with the rain pouring down on me in buckets. It was morning, and I was in nothing more than my underwear. I was shivering, but found it difficult to turn and make my way up the stairs to the house. Fortunately, the door was unlocked, and everyone was still asleep inside. I returned to my room and sat down in the bed, trying to piece together what had happened. I felt strange, violated, and nauseous, like I'd been on display in some sleazy nightclub. I quickly went to shower, wanting only to scrub the thin layer of mucus off my body. Drying and dressing as fast as I could, I decided to take a walk outside where I'd come to, just to see if anything seemed out of the ordinary. Several of the junipers and sage had been charred on one side, forming a circular area of about 100 feet. Moving to touch one of the trees, I found, despite it still raining, that the tree was hot to the touch. Looking up at the sky, I knew what I thought had happened wasn't a dream or a figment of my imagination. It was real, and there was proof. I ran back inside, by which time my roommates had woken up, and I reluctantly told them the story. I expected them to scoff, as who would believe someone that said they'd just experienced what I had? Instead, they looked between one another before telling me that it wasn't uncommon for them to have visitors. When I asked why they wouldn't tell me something like that when I moved in, they said exactly what I would have, which was, "Would you have believed me then?" I was shocked, but they were compassionate. After time, it was just something that had happened, but nothing more needed to be said. I moved on, telling no one else for fear of being seen as a nutjob. Some years later, I moved back to Salt Lake and had started a new life for myself. I remarried and was settling into life as best I could. My husband at the time, we'll call him Henry, drove a truck for one of the big trucking companies. Having found someone to watch my girls, I went on the road with him just to get out and see the country a bit. We'd parked on a ramp off westbound I-40 in New Mexico one night, as my husband was tired and out of hours, meaning the DOT time period allotted for truck drivers to drive safely without endangering anyone or themselves. Curling up next to him, on the bunk, I was soon lulled into a deep slumber, unlike my normal toss-and-turn struggle to fall asleep. Around 2 a.m, I was awakened by the sound that had haunted my nightmares for years. It was a metallic, almost purring, whirling noise that was high-pitched and constant. I gripped the bunk tightly, tears immediately coming to my eyes. Crying, all I could think was, "Please, don't let them take me again, please." My next conscious thought was of standing outside the truck, staring at the running lights in the confusion. New Mexico can be scorching during the day, but the nights can get well below freezing. I was shivering, and my teeth were chattering. My skin glistened in the light, drawing my attention to the thin layer of mucus covering it. As before, I was wearing only my underwear. I quickly climbed back in the truck and locked the door. Grabbing a towel, I scrubbed vigorously at my skin, wanting to remove the slime. My ex slept through the whole thing, but woke shortly after I'd put my clothes back on. I tried to talk to him about what had happened, but like so many other people in my life, he thought I was full of it. I just wanted him to believe me, and instead, he began teasing me. After years of this abuse, I clammed up and told no one. I was tired of being made fun of by people who could never understand what I'd gone through. I remained silent for years, facing the incidents as they came on my own. A month ago, it happened again. I woke to the metallic purring noise and cried desperately for my youngest daughter of the 3 I lived with. I begged them to leave me alone, but they didn't. I have no memory of what happened that time, only that as before, I became aware standing in my underwear in the middle of my bed. Unlike the other times, I wasn't covered in mucus, which was both a relief and a terror. Why this time after so many others? Looking at the time on my phone, I saw that it was nearly 6 in the morning. I'd missed my 4 a.m. alarm and had to scramble to the appointment I had in less than an hour. When my eldest daughter came home from work that afternoon, she asked about the nightmare I'd had and where I had gone at 2 in the morning. I started crying, and as I was so physically exhausted by that point and broke down. My eldest and youngest daughters listened as I related them what I just told you, each staring blankly at me. I thought that they would think I was crazy, as that's what everyone else said over the years. Instead, they offered me sympathy and understanding, fully believing everything I'd shared with them. My eldest, we'll call him Jack, who'd experienced exactly what I had, though his experiences didn't start until 2012. Hearing that noise on your podcast yesterday sent chills down my spine and brought tears to my eyes. It wasn't metal. It was them, communicating. Cass's experiences are horrifying, and I can only hope and pray that whoever or whatever it is that torments her will finally leave her alone and give her the peace that she and her family deserve. Stories like Cass's need to be told because it not only helps the person sharing their experience, but it may help others who've had experiences to realize that they're not alone. Thousands of people are reported missing every day, and while many of those people are eventually found, hundreds remain missing under extremely odd circumstances and are never seen again. I can only wonder if the strange beings that Cass described seeing during her encounters are the same entities responsible for a portion of missing persons around the world each day. If you or anyone that you know recognizes the bizarre audio that Cass described and that was captured during Frederick Valentich's last moments, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or by visiting paranormal-mysteries.com. That's all for our show today, but I do have many more listener accounts. I really appreciate everyone who's been sending them in to me, and I look forward to sharing them with all of you in our next few episodes. Don't forget that you can get involved by joining our forum and by following us on all social media, and you can support the show by subscribing and sharing the show with your friends. New episodes are available on all of your favorite podcast apps, including Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I hope you all have a great rest of the week, and from all of us at Paranormal Mysteries, thank you for listening, and please remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.